The door to the meeting room opened again, and another human entered. She was shorter than Admiral Park, with long black hair tied back in a simple style. She wore a white coat over dark clothes and carried a tablet computer in her hands. Her movements were quick and precise, like someone who was used to working with dangerous things. "This is Dr. Kim Jasu," Admiral Park said, as the woman sat down across from Ambassador Kekstar. "She has been studying your people for many years. She has some interesting things to tell you about your galactic council." Dr. Kim placed her tablet on the table and activated its screen. The device projected another hologram into the air, but this one was different from the military data Admiral Park had shown. Instead, it displayed charts and graphs showing population numbers and cultural information from dozens of different planets. "We have been listening to your radio transmissions for over 50 years, Dr. Kim began, her voice calm and scientific. "We have recorded your historical broadcasts, your cultural programs, your government communications. We know much more about your council than you think we do." Kekstar looked at the floating displays with growing unease. The information was incredibly detailed, showing population statistics from council worlds going back hundreds of years. There were cultural preservation indexes, language survival rates, and something called happiness measurements for different species. "What disturbs us most," Dr. Kim continued, "is what happens to species after they join your council. You say you offer protection and advancement, but the data tells a different story. Every single species that has joined you has experienced the same pattern within 2 generations." She touched her tablet and the hologram changed to show a series of before and after comparisons. The differences were shocking. Planets that had once been home to billions of diverse people now held much smaller populations that all looked and acted remarkably similar to each other. "Your council does not conquer worlds through war," the doctor explained. "You conquer them through slow cultural death. You give people technology that makes them dependent on you. You give them medicine that requires constant supply from council worlds. You slowly replace their languages with yours, their customs with yours, their dreams with yours." Admiral Park leaned forward and added his own observations. "We call it soft genocide, the complete destruction of what makes a people unique while keeping their bodies alive long enough to serve your purposes. It is more effective than war because the victims think they are being helped." Kekstar felt his skin shifting from green to a deep purple color, which indicated severe distress among his people. This was impossible. The council had always been greeted with gratitude by the species they helped. Advanced technology always improved lives. Longer lifespans always made people happier. Better organization always made societies more efficient. "But you provide medicine that extends life," he protested weakly. "You give technology that solves hunger and disease. You bring peace to worlds that were torn by war. How can this be considered harmful?" Dr. Kim touched her tablet again, and the hologram showed medical data that made Kekstar's stomachs clench. The life extension medicine did work, but it also made people unable to reproduce without continued treatment. The hunger-solving technology worked, but it required rare minerals that could only be obtained from council-controlled mines. The peace came at the cost of all individual thought and creativity. "Your medicine creates dependency," she explained. "Every person who takes it becomes unable to survive without regular doses from council medical facilities. Your food technology requires materials that you control completely. Your peace comes from turning diverse, interesting people into identical copies of each other." The room fell silent as Kekstar absorbed this information. No one had ever analyzed the council's methods this way before. Most species were so grateful for immediate improvements that they never looked at long-term consequences. The few who had noticed problems were usually too weak to resist by the time they understood what was happening, but humans apparently had been watching and learning for decades, while the council assumed they were just another primitive civilization waiting to be absorbed. They had studied every aspect of council operations and identified the hidden costs that other species had missed. "We have something else to show you," Admiral Park said, activating his own device. The hologram changed to display what looked like genetic information, but it was unlike anything Kekstar had seen before. The patterns were incredibly complex, with layers of variation that seemed almost chaotic. "This is human genetic diversity," the Admiral explained. "We are one species, but we have more internal variety than most of your council Worlds combined, we have been fighting each other for thousands of years, but we have never become identical. We have never lost our ability to think differently, to create new solutions to surprise our enemies. Dr. Kim added her own analysis. Your council succeeded for so long because you always encountered species that were relatively uniform in their thinking. They had one government, one dominant culture, one way of solving problems. When you absorbed their leaders, you absorbed their entire civilization. But humans have hundreds of different governments, thousands of different cultures, millions of different ways of thinking about problems. We have been at war with ourselves for our entire history, and that has made us incredibly good at adapting to new threats. Skextar realized the terrible truth these humans were revealing. The Galactic Council had become successful by finding civilizations that were like themselves, organized, hierarchical, predictable, but humanity was none of those things. They were chaotic, diverse, unpredictable, and they had been using that chaos to prepare for exactly this situation. You have been preparing for war with us for 50 years, he said, the words coming out like a question, even though he already knew the answer. Admiral Park smiled, that unsettling human expression again. Not just preparing for war, preparing to win. We studied every species your council absorbed. We identified every weakness in your methods. We learned every lesson that previous victims never had. The chance to learn. Dr. Kim showed him one final display. This one showed a timeline of human military development over the past 50 years. Everything from weapons technology to strategic thinking to psychological warfare had been advancing at an incredible pace. While the council assumed they were dealing with primitives, we have been preparing for you specifically, she said. Your exact ships, your exact weapons, your exact tactics. We know how you fight because you have been fighting the same way for centuries. You never needed to innovate because nothing ever challenged you, but we innovate constantly, Admiral Park added. We have to because we have been fighting each other forever. Every human military leader grows up studying the failures of previous human military leaders. We learn from defeat in ways that your council never needed to learn. Skextar looked around the simple room with new understanding. This was not a primitive species begging for protection. This was a predator species that had been studying its prey for decades. They had identified every weakness in the council's methods and developed countermeasures for every advantage the council thought it possessed. The ambassador realized that first contact had not been the beginning of human-alien relations. It had been the moment humanity decided they were ready to spring their trap. The council had not discovered Earth. Earth had allowed itself to be discovered when the humans were finally prepared for what would come next. Your council made one critical mistake, Dr. Kim said as she packed up her tablet. You assumed that because we could not travel between stars we could not threaten you. But humans have always been most dangerous when we appear to be weakest. We have always been best at winning when our enemies think they have already won. As the implications of this conversation sank in, Skextar understood that the Galactic Council was about to face something it had never encountered before. A species that had been preparing for this exact war for generations, and was eager to finally put their preparations to the test. Ambassador Skextar walked through the hallways of the Earth building with complete confidence. He had done this exact same thing hundreds of times before on hundreds of different planets. The routine never changed. First, the aliens would panic when they saw his ships in their sky. Then they would gather their leaders in some fancy palace or throne room. Finally, they would beg him not to destroy their world and accept his generous offer of protection. Today should be no different. The humans were just another primitive species that needed guidance. They lived on a small blue planet in a quiet part of the galaxy. Their technology was laughably basic compared to the Galactic Council. They still used chemical rockets to barely escape their own atmosphere. While the council had been traveling between stars for thousands of years, Skextar adjusted his ceremonial robes as he approached the meeting room. His three eyes scanned the simple hallway with disappointment. Where were the gold decorations? Where were the terrified guards bowing as he passed? Where was the desperate king waiting to surrender his crown? Most species at least tried to impress him with their greatest palace or temple instead. The humans had brought him to what looked like an office building. The walls were plain white, the floors were simple gray carpet. There were no statues of their gods, no paintings of their greatest victories, no treasure displays to show their wealth. It was almost insulting how ordinary everything Look, the door opened and Kekstar stepped inside expecting to see a room full of frightened human leaders. Instead he found one man sitting calmly at a simple wooden table. The human was wearing a dark blue uniform with several small metal decorations. On his chest, his hair was black with touches of gray at the sides. His eyes were dark and steady as they watched. Kekstar entered. The ambassador paused. This was not how first contact meetings were supposed to go. Where were the dozens of advisors? Where were the religious leaders chanting prayers? Where were the military officers shaking with fear at his arrival? The human just sat there looking at him like he was waiting for a normal business meeting. Kekstar cleared his throat and activated his universal translator. The device would make sure the primitive human could understand the generous offer he was about to receive. He straightened his shoulders and began the speech he had given so many times before. Your species has been chosen for a great honor, he announced, his voice echoing slightly in the small room. The Galactic Council has decided to offer you membership in our vast alliance. You will receive advanced technology that will solve all your problems. You will get medicine that will make your people live longer. You will have protection from any enemies who might threaten your world. The human nodded slowly and seemed to be thinking about the offer. Kekstar continued with growing confidence. All we ask in return is very simple. You must surrender all your weapons to us. Your military forces will be disbanded. Your leaders will step down and let council governors take charge of your planet. This is for your own good, of course. Primitive species always make mistakes when they try to govern themselves. The ambassador expected the human to start crying or fall to his knees in gratitude. Instead, the man leaned forward and rested his elbows on the table. That is very kind of you to offer, he said in a calm voice. But we have thought about this situation and we have our own proposal. We would like to invade your worlds instead. Kekstar blinked all three of his eyes in rapid sequence. The translator must have broken somehow. There was no way this primitive human had just suggested attacking the mighty Galactic Council. He tapped the device on his collar and tried again. I'm sorry, but I think there was a problem with the translation, he said slowly. Could you repeat what you just said? The human smiled, and the expression made Kekstar feel strangely uncomfortable. I said we want to invade your planets. We have been studying your Galactic Council for many years now, and we think it would be better if we were in charge instead of youth. Ambassador felt his skin changing from its normal blue color to a pale green. This was impossible. No species had ever refused the Council's offer, let alone suggested fighting back. Every civilization they had encountered had been grateful to trade their independence for safety and technology. Even the most warlike races had seen the wisdom of joining peacefully rather than being destroyed. But Admiral Park Minho continued speaking as if this conversation was perfectly normal. We have done a lot of research about your council and how it operates. We know about the other species you have absorbed over the centuries. We know how you make them give up their weapons and their culture. We know how their populations always get smaller after they join Kekstar tried to regain his composure. This human clearly did not understand the situation. The Council controlled 17,000 star systems. They had weapons that could turn entire planets into dust. They had fleets of ships that could block out the sun of any world that opposed them. You do not seem to understand, he said, trying to sound patient. Your species has barely learned to leave your own planet. Our technology is thousands of years ahead of yours. Our military could destroy your entire world without even landing a single soldier. Why would you think you could fight us? Admiral Park reached into a drawer and pulled out a thin rectangular device. He placed it on the table and touched its surface. A three-dimensional image appeared in the air showing star charts and what looked like military data. Because we are not like the other species you have conquered, we have been preparing for this day for a very long time. The hologram showed images that made Kekstar's 3 hearts beat faster. Human ships that he had never seen before, weapons designs that looked disturbingly effective, strategic plans that showed detailed knowledge of Council military positions. The primitives had been watching and learning while the Council thought they were ignorant too. We know you expect us to be afraid, the Admiral continued. We know you think we will surrender like everyone else. But humans are different. We have been fighting wars for thousands of years. We have never stopped learning how to fight. We have never stopped preparing for the day when someone would try to make us slaves. Kekstar stared at the human leader, feeling something he had not experienced in centuries: uncertainty. Every other species had followed the same pattern. They had seen the Council's superior technology and immediately understood that resistance was hopeless. They had gratefully accepted protection in exchange for freedom, but this human sat across from him, talking about invasion as if it was a reasonable business proposal. The ambassador tried one more time to restore order to this impossible conversation. You cannot be serious. Your entire species would be destroyed within days if you attacked. US, we have weapons you cannot imagine. We have allies. Across the galaxy, we have never lost a war because we have never needed to fight one admiral. Park turned off the holographic display and looked directly at Kekstar with those unsettling dark eyes. That is exactly why you are going to lose, he said. Quietly, you have forgotten how to fight because you have not needed to for so long, but we never forgot. We never stopped preparing. And now we are ready to show you what humans can do when someone threatens our freedom. The room fell silent except for the quiet hum of the air circulation system. Kekstar realized with growing horror that this was not going according to any plan the Council had ever made. These humans were not acting like victims. They were acting like predators who had been waiting patiently for their prey to walk into a trap. For the first time in his long diplomatic career, Ambassador Kekstar began to wonder if the Galactic Council had made a terrible mistake in coming to Earth, but it was too late to turn back now. The game had begun and the humans were apparently ready to play by rules that no one else in the galaxy understood. The meeting room door opened for a third time and Commander Lee Dong-Yoon entered the space. His presence immediately changed the atmosphere in the room where Ambassador Kekstar sat with Admiral Park and Dr. Kim. The commander was tall and moved with the controlled grace of someone who had spent years training for violence. His dark eyes swept the room, taking in every detail before settling on the alien diplomat. Kekstar felt something he had not experienced in centuries, the instinctive recognition of a predator. This human radiated a controlled danger that made the ambassador's skin crawl. Most species the Council encountered were peaceful by nature. They might have had armies, but their soldiers were reluctant warriors who preferred farming or building to fighting. Commander Lee sat down at the table and placed a small device in front of him. He did not speak for several moments. Instead, he simply studied Kekstar with the focused attention of someone evaluating potential prey. The silence stretched uncomfortably until the ambassador felt compelled to break it. What is your military role in this situation? He asked, trying to sound confident despite the growing fear in his 3 hearts. I am in charge of the forces that will be hunting your people, Commander Lee replied in a voice that was as calm as it was terrifying. We have been studying your military capabilities for decades, and we have identified every weakness in your forces. Your Council has forgotten how to fight real wars because you have not faced real resistance in centuries. Admiral Park activated another holographic display, this one showing detailed analyses of Galactic Council military operations. The information was incredibly thorough, covering everything from ship designs to tactical patterns to the psychological profiles of Council military leaders. Your forces are designed for intimidation, not combat, the Admiral explained. Every battle you have fought in the past 300 years has been against species that surrendered immediately when they saw your superior technology. You have never had to adapt your tactics because nothing has ever challenged them. Dr. Kim added her own observations from a scientific perspective. Your military personnel show clear signs of what we call victory syndrome. They have become so accustomed to easy wins that they have lost the ability to function when facing real opposition. Their training focuses on ceremony and display rather than actual combat effectiveness. Commander Lee touched his device and the hologram changed to show comparative analyses between Council forces and human military units. The differences were stark. Council soldiers were trained for parade formations and occupation duties, while human soldiers were trained for the kind of brutal, adaptive warfare that came from centuries of fighting other humans. Your people have ruled the galaxy for so long that you have forgotten what real warfare looks like, the commander said. Every Council military leader has grown up expecting enemies to surrender before any actual fighting begins, but humans have never stopped fighting. We have never stopped learning how to kill each other more effective. Kekstar tried to defend his people's military prowess. But the words sounded weak, even to himself. "We have weapons that can destroy entire planets," he said. "Our ships can move faster than light and strike from impossible distances. Our technology is thousands of years ahead of yours." Commander Lee smiled, and the expression was more frightening than any weapon Kextar had ever seen. "Technology is only as good as the people using it," he said. "Your weapons are designed to frighten primitives into surrender, not to win battles against opponents who refuse to be intimidated." The hologram shifted to show human military innovations developed specifically for fighting advanced alien forces. Kextar saw weapons designed to disable energy shields, tactics developed for fighting in zero gravity, and strategies for turning superior alien technology against itself. "We have been preparing for asymmetric warfare against a technologically superior opponent for 50 years. Admiral Park explained. "Every human military academy teaches courses on fighting enemies. With better weapons, better ships, and better technology, we have made it our specialty." Dr. Kim showed medical data that made Kextar's situation even more dire. "Human soldiers show physiological adaptations for extended combat stress," she explained. "Our people can function effectively in high-stress situations for much longer periods than most species. We have evolved for warfare in ways that most galactic civilizations cannot match." But the most disturbing revelation came when Commander Lee activated a communication device across the room. A series of voices began reporting in different human languages, but the universal translator made their meaning clear. Strike teams were already in position on dozens of Council worlds. Agent Kim Min-soo reporting from Nexus Prime. "Council security forces are completely unprepared for guerrilla operations. We have been operating here for 2 years without detection." Agent Park Seoan reporting from Central Command. "Their computer systems have been compromised. For 8 months we have complete access to their military communications." Agent Lee A1 reporting from the Council homeworld. "Their leaders spend their time in committee meetings, not preparing for war. They still think this is a diplomatic negotiation." Kextar realized with growing horror that the humans had not just been preparing to defend Earth, they had been preparing to launch a coordinated attack across the entire Galactic Council. The aliens had walked into what humans called a trap. "How long have your people been infiltrating our worlds?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Commander Lee consulted his device. "Long enough," he replied. "Our agents have been integrating into Council society for over a decade. Most of your people think they are unusual-looking Council citizens. Your security is designed to keep out primitive barbarians, not trained intelligence operatives." Admiral Park delivered the final blow to Kextar's confidence. "Your Council has made the same mistake that many human civilizations have made throughout our history. You assume that technological superiority automatically means military superiority. But humans have won countless wars against enemies with better weapons by being smarter, more adaptable, and more willing to do whatever it takes to survive." Dr. Kim showed historical data from human conflicts. Earth wars where technologically inferior forces had defeated superior enemies through better strategy, superior motivation, and the willingness to fight unconventionally. The pattern was clear throughout human history. The side that wanted victory most usually found a way to achieve it. "Your people fight for duty and order," Commander Lee observed. "But humans fight for survival and freedom. Those are much stronger motivations. When your soldiers realize they might actually lose, they will panic and make mistakes. When human soldiers realize they might lose, they become more dangerous." The room fell silent as the implications became clear. The Galactic Council had encountered something completely outside their experience. A species that was not only refusing to surrender, but had been actively preparing to destroy them for decades. The humans had turned the Council's greatest strength, their predictable success, into their greatest weakness. Kextar looked around the simple meeting room and finally understood what had happened. The Council had not discovered a primitive world ready for absorption. They had walked into a carefully prepared killing ground designed by a species that had been studying them for decades and was finally ready to spring their trap. "Your entire Council is going to fall," Admiral Park said simply. "Not because we have better technology, but because we want to win more than you want to keep ruling. We have been preparing for this war our entire lives, while your people have forgotten that war is even possible." The hunting season had begun, and for the first time in galactic history, the prey had become the predators. Captain Hanujan entered the meeting room carrying what appeared to be a simple briefcase, but Ambassador Kekstar could sense that whatever was inside would deliver another devastating blow to his understanding of the situation. The captain was younger than the other humans, but moved with the same predatory confidence that seemed to characterize all the military personnel he had met. The briefcase opened to reveal a portable computer system far more advanced than anything Kekstar had expected. From this supposedly primitive species, Captain Han activated the device, and immediately the room filled with three-dimensional tactical displays showing battle scenarios that made the ambassadors' blood run cold. "We need to show you something that will help you understand why your council is going to lose this war," Captain Han said, as the displays shifted to show human military exercises. The images showed thousands of soldiers training in environments that perfectly replicated councilship interiors, council city layouts, and even council homeworld geography. "For the past 30 years, we have been running constant military simulations based on every piece of information we could gather about your forces," the captain explained. "Every human military unit has trained specifically for fighting council troops in council environments using council technology against them." Dr. Kim added scientific context. "Our analysis shows that your military has not adapted their tactics in over 200 years. They use the same formations, the same communication patterns, the same strategic thinking that worked against primitive opponents. But those methods are useless against an enemy that has studied them extensively." The door opened again, and three more humans entered. Colonel Choi Mina, who moved with the fluid grace of someone trained in hand-to-hand combat. Major Yoon Tae-young, whose eyes constantly scanned for threats even in this secure room, and Lieutenant Kim Soo-won, who looked barely old enough to be a soldier but radiated the same dangerous competence as the others. Each of these officers represents a different aspect of human warfare that your council has never encountered, Admiral Park explained. Colonel Choi specializes in cyber warfare and electronic intelligence. Major Yoon handles psychological operations and information warfare. Lieutenant Kim leads our special operations forces and what we call impossible missions. Colonel Choi activated her own device, and the tactical displays changed to show council computer networks with red markers indicating security breaches. "Your information systems are incredibly sophisticated," she said, "but they were designed to prevent access by primitive civilizations, not by opponents who understand advanced computing." The displays showed human agents accessing council databases, military communications, and even personal messages between high-ranking officials. The scope of the infiltration was breathtaking, covering not just military targets but civilian infrastructure, economic systems, and social networks. "We have been inside your computer networks for over 15 years, the colonel continued. "Every message your leaders send, every order your military issues, every secret your government keeps, we know about it immediately. Your council has been fighting this war with no secrets while we have kept all of ours." Major Yoon presented his own terrifying revelations about psychological warfare. "Your species responds predictably to certain types of stress," he explained. "When council individuals are faced with unexpected opposition, they follow behavior patterns that we can exploit. We have developed specific techniques for causing panic, fear, and confusion among your forces." The psychological profiles he showed were incredibly detailed, covering not just general species characteristics but individual personality analyses of key council leaders. The humans had identified every weakness, every fear, every pressure point that could be used to manipulate their enemies. Lieutenant Kim revealed the most shocking information of all. "Our special forces have been operating on council worlds for over a decade," she said. "We do not just gather information, we actively prepare the ground for invasion. We identify local resistance groups, we map security weaknesses, we establish supply caches and escape routes." The tactical displays showed the locations of human agents embedded throughout council space. Their positions formed a network that could support a massive, coordinated assault. The aliens had not just been infiltrated, they had been prepared for conquest from within. But the most devastating revelation came when Captain Han showed the scope of human preparation. This was not just military planning, this was civilization-level preparation for interstellar warfare. Every aspect of human society had been quietly modified to support this coming conflict. Our entire educational system has been Teaching children about your council for 20 years, he explained. Every student learns council history, council technology. Council weaknesses disguised as academic subjects about theoretical alien civilizations. We have raised an entire generation that knows how to fight. Udar Kim showed social and economic data that proved the captain's point. Human manufacturing had been secretly retooled to produce materials needed for space warfare. Human medical research had focused on problems that would arise during extended military campaigns. Human agricultural systems had been modified to support populations during wartime rationing. Your species has spent 50 years preparing for one specific war. Admiral Park said, the war against the Galactic Council. Every decision our governments made, every technology our scientists developed, every tactic our military practiced was designed with this conflict in mind. Commander Lee added, the military perspective. We did not just prepare to fight your current forces, we prepared to fight the forces you would develop in response to our attacks. We have planned for every possible adaptation you might make and developed countermeasures for countermeasures that do not even exist yet. The room filled with more displays showing the incredible depth of human preparation, alternative energy sources that could not be disrupted by council technology, food production systems that could function during extended siege conditions, medical facilities designed to treat injuries from exotic alien weapons, communication networks that could operate even if all conventional systems were destroyed. Kekstar realized that he was not looking at a species that had decided to fight the council. He was looking at a species that had spent decades transforming itself into a weapon specifically designed to destroy the council. Every human in the room had been trained from childhood for this exact war. Colonel Choi delivered another shocking revelation. We have been in contact with resistance groups on 47 council worlds, she said. The species you absorbed still exist, they are just suppressed. When we reveal the truth about council occupation, they will join us. They remember what freedom felt like. The tactical displays showed communication networks connecting human agents with underground resistance movements across council space. The aliens had not just been infiltrated by humans, they had been prepared for liberation by their own suppressed populations. Major Yoon explained the psychological impact. Your council has ruled through the belief that resistance is impossible, but when we demonstrate that the council can be hurt, that they can be defeated, that illusion will shatter. Oppressed populations will realize they outnumber their oppressors by millions to one. Lieutenant Kim showed military analyses of potential allied forces. The suppressed species still retain knowledge of warfare even after decades of council control. They had been forced to give up their weapons, but they had not forgotten how to fight. When properly supported, they could become effective military allies. Captain Han presented the final piece of the human strategy. We are not invading your worlds to replace your council with human rule, he said. We are liberating them to restore the civilizations you destroyed. The species you absorbed will rule themselves again with human protection instead of council oppression. Admiral Park stood and addressed Kekstar directly. Your people made a fundamental mistake, he said. You assume that because we could not travel between stars we pose no threat. But humans have always been most dangerous when we appear to be helpless. We have spent 50 years appearing primitive while becoming the most dangerous military force the galaxy has ever seen. Dr. Kim added the scientific perspective. Your council succeeded by finding civilizations that were similar to yourselves, organized, predictable, controllable, but human civilization is chaotic, adaptive, and impossible to control. We have turned chaos into our greatest weapon. The meeting room fell silent as Kekstar absorbed the fruit of what the humans had revealed. This was not first contact, this was the end of a 50-year preparation period. The humans had not been discovered by the Council. The Council had been lured into a trap that had been decades in the making. Commander Lee delivered the final statement. Your Council came here expecting to absorb another primitive species. Instead, you have awakened something that your people have never faced before. A civilization that has studied you, learned your weaknesses, and prepared specifically to destroy everything you have built. The war had not begun with first contact. Kekstar realized it had begun 50 years ago when humans first detected Council radio transmissions. Everything since then had been humanity preparing for this moment when they would finally reveal themselves as the apex predators of the galaxy. Admiral Park stood from his chair, and the simple gesture felt like a declaration of war, Ambassador. Kextar watched in growing horror as every human in the room moved with the coordinated precision of a military unit that had been planning this moment for decades. The casual meeting atmosphere disappeared, replaced by the focused intensity of predators. "Ready to strike? The time for talking is over," the Admiral announced. "Lieutenant Kim, please initiate Operation Galactic Dawn." Lieutenant Kim Suwon activated a communication device that connected her to human agents across the galaxy. Kextar listened in terrified fascination as reports began flowing in from dozens of Council worlds. The humans had not just been preparing for war, they had been positioning themselves to launch simultaneous attacks across the entire galactic civilization. Agent Park reporting from Nexus 7 Council. "Defense grid is offline. We control their planetary communications." Agent Lee reporting from Central Mining Complex. "The facility is secure. Council forces never saw us coming." Agent Kim reporting from the Outer Rim colonies. "Local populations are rising up after seeing our broadcast about Council occupation methods." Dr. Kim activated her tablet and showed Kextar real-time data feeds from across Council space. The scope of the coordinated attack was breathtaking. Human agents who had been living undercover for years were simultaneously revealing themselves and striking at critical infrastructure targets. "Your people have been living among us for over a decade," Kextar said, his voice weak with shock. "How is this possible, Commander?" Lee answered with a predatory smile. "Human beings are incredibly adaptable. We can blend into almost any society. Given enough time and preparation, your Council citizens are so used to seeing diversity among absorbed species that our agents simply appear to be unusual looking individuals from distant worlds." Captain Han showed tactical displays revealing the full extent of human infiltration. Council military bases had human agents in key positions. Council government offices had human staff members. Council research facilities had human scientists working on classified projects. The aliens had been completely penetrated without ever realizing it, but the most shocking revelation came when Colonel Choi activated a massive holographic display showing the true scope of human operations. This was not just military infiltration, this was systematic preparation for the complete collapse of galactic civilization. "We have spent 15 years identifying every critical system that keeps your Council functioning," she explained. "Power generation facilities, food distribution networks, transportation hubs, communication relays, everything your civilization needs to survive is vulnerable to simultaneous attack." Major Yoon added psychological warfare elements. "We have also been preparing the populations of Council worlds for liberation," he said. "Our agents have been spreading information about the true cost of Council membership disguised as academic research, historical studies, and cultural preservation projects." The displays showed public opinion surveys from dozens of worlds revealing growing discontent with Council rule. The humans had been slowly awakening suppressed populations to the reality of their situation, preparing them for the moment when revolution would become possible. Lieutenant Kim presented the most devastating evidence of human preparation. "We have been establishing supply caches and safe houses throughout Council space for the past 8 years, she said. "Every major population center has hidden stockpiles of weapons, equipment, and medical supplies ready to support extended military operations." Kextar realized with growing despair that the humans had not just been planning to attack the Council, they had been planning to occupy and govern Council worlds. The scope of their preparation suggested they intended to completely replace the existing galactic order. "Your entire civilization is going to collapse," Admiral Park said matter-of-factly. "Not just your military, your government, your entire way of life, every system you depend on, every relationship you have built, every assumption you have made about your place in the galaxy is about to be proven wrong." Dr. Kim showed population analyses that made Kextar's situation even more hopeless. "The species your Council absorbed still exist in much larger numbers than your own people," she explained. "When they realize they can fight back, they will overwhelm your forces through sheer numbers. Your technological advantage becomes meaningless when you are outnumbered 1,000 to 1. The communication device crackled with more reports from across the galaxy. Human agents were not just attacking Council facilities, they were broadcasting the truth about Council occupation methods to populations that had been kept ignorant for generations. "Commander, Lee explained the strategic implications. Your council ruled through information control and technological dependency. But we have broken your information monopoly and provided alternatives to your technology. The foundations of your power are crumbling. Faster than your forces can respond. Captain Han showed military analyses of council response times. Their forces are designed for occupation duty, not military campaigns, he explained. They cannot coordinate effectively across multiple star systems. When facing simultaneous attacks, your military is structured for controlling conquered populations, not fighting actual wars. The holographic displays showed Council military units struggling to respond to coordinated attacks across dozens of worlds. Their forces were spread too thin, their communication networks were compromised, and their commanders were panicking as they faced the impossible situation of fighting experienced opponents. Colonel Choi revealed another layer of human preparation. We have also been sabotaging your industrial capacity for the past 5 years, she said. Your weapons factories, your shipyards, your research facilities. They all have critical vulnerabilities that we have been carefully preparing to exploit. The displays showed Council industrial centers going offline as human saboteurs activated plans that had been years in the making. The aliens were not just facing military defeat, they were facing the complete collapse of their ability to maintain technological superiority. Major Yoon presented psychological profiles of Council leadership showing their complete inability to adapt to unexpected challenges. Your leaders have never faced real opposition, he explained. They do not know how to function when their standard methods fail. They will make increasingly desperate decisions that will turn their own people against them. Lieutenant Kim delivered the most shocking revelation of all. We are not trying to conquer your people, she said. We are liberating them from you. Every species your council absorbed will be offered the chance to govern themselves again. We are dismantling your empire not to rule it but to free it. Kekstar watched in numb horror as the displays showed human forces working alongside resistance groups from dozens of different species. The aliens who had been absorbed by the Council were not just supporting human attacks, they were leading them. Admiral Park walked to the window and looked out at the Earth sky where Council ships had arrived, expecting easy victory instead of finding their doom. Your council made one critical error, he said. You assumed that technological superiority would always be enough to maintain control, but humans have proven throughout our history that superior technology means nothing when facing superior motivation. Dr. Kim showed the final piece of data that destroyed any remaining hope. Kekstar might have had the mathematical models show that your council cannot survive this coordinated assault, she said. Your forces are outnumbered, your supply lines are compromised, your leadership is panicking, and your subject populations are in revolt. You have already lost, Commander. Lee delivered the final statement that marked the end of the Galactic Order Kekstar had known his entire life. The hunt has begun, he said. Your council spent centuries preying on weaker species. Now you will learn what it feels like to be prey. The room fell silent except for the continuing reports from across the galaxy as human agents and liberated populations struck at the foundations of Council power. The great galactic civilization that had seemed invincible was crumbling in real time, and the humans, who had appeared to be just another primitive species to be absorbed, had revealed themselves as the apex predators of the galaxy. Kekstar realized that this meeting had never been about negotiation, it had been about giving him a front row seat to watch the complete destruction of everything his people had built. The humans had not just prepared for war, they had prepared for the complete transformation of galactic civilization, and the hunt for his people had only just begun. 6 months had passed since the day that changed everything in the galaxy. Ambassador Kekstar sat in the same simple meeting room on Earth, but everything else had transformed beyond recognition. The Galactic Council no longer existed. Its massive bureaucracy scattered, its fleets defeated, its worlds liberated by the very species it had tried to absorb. Admiral Park Minho entered the room, but he now wore different insignia marking him as Supreme Commander of the Galactic Liberation Alliance. The transformation of this human from a planetary defense officer to the leader of a galaxy-spanning military force still seemed impossible to Kekstar, but the evidence was undeniable. The reports from across known space told the same story everywhere. Council forces had collapsed not through massive battles, but through the systematic awakening of populations. who remembered what freedom had felt like. The humans had not conquered the galaxy, they had reminded it how to free itself, Commander. We have final reports from the Outer Rim systems, Dr. Kim Jasu announced as she entered carrying the same tablet she had used months ago to reveal the truth about Council occupation methods. The last Council strongholds have surrendered and their populations are requesting alliance membership. Stector noted that Dr. Kim now held the title of Director of Species Relations, her scientific expertise in understanding different civilizations making her invaluable in helping liberated worlds rebuild their unique cultures. The humans had not just destroyed the Council, they had systematically worked to restore what the Council had tried to erase. Captain Han Yujin, now General Han, presented military reports that showed the incredible scope of the transformation. 17,000 star systems had been liberated from Council control in less than 6 months. The speed of the collapse had shocked even the humans who had planned it. Your people accomplished something that should have been impossible, Kextar said, his voice filled with grudging admiration. The Council had ruled for over 3 centuries. No force in the galaxy had ever successfully challenged our authority. How did you achieve total victory so quickly? Admiral Park sat down across from him with the same calm demeanor he had shown during their first meeting. We did not achieve victory through superior force, he explained. We achieved it by convincing your subject populations that victory was possible. Once people believe they can be free, they become unstoppable. Commander Li Dongyun, now Minister of Defense, entered with reports from the new alliance military structure. The humans had not simply defeated Council forces, they had integrated the best elements of dozens of different military traditions into a defensive alliance that was stronger than anything the galaxy had ever seen. The key was psychological warfare, Commander Li explained. Your Council ruled through the belief that resistance was hopeless. When we demonstrated that Council forces could be defeated, that illusion shattered completely. Subject populations realized they had always outnumbered their oppressors. They just needed to believe they could win. Dr. Kim activated her tablet showing cultural restoration data from across the galaxy. The most remarkable aspect of the post-Council period was how quickly suppressed civilizations had begun recovering their unique identities. Languages that had been banned for generations were being taught again. Traditional customs were being restored. Art forms that had been forbidden were flourishing. Your Council made a critical mistake in assuming that cultural suppression was permanent, she explained. People remember who they were even after decades of forced conformity. When given the opportunity, they returned to their authentic selves with incredible enthusiasm. Captain Han presented economic data showing how the liberation had affected galactic commerce. The Council monopoly on advanced technology had been broken, with human engineers teaching previously suppressed species how to maintain and improve their own systems. Independent trade networks were forming between worlds that had been forced to trade only with Council-approved partners. Colonel Choi Mina, now Director of Information Systems, reported on the communications revolution that had followed the Council's collapse. For the first time in centuries, species across the galaxy were talking directly to each other, sharing knowledge and forming relationships without Council oversight. The information sharing has created an explosion of innovation, she explained. When different species can work together freely, they develop solutions that no single civilization could achieve alone. We are seeing technological and cultural advances that would have taken centuries under Council control. Major Yoon Tae-young, now Ambassador for Psychological Reconstruction, presented data on the mental health recovery of liberated populations. The psychological impact of freedom had been dramatic, with formerly suppressed species showing remarkable improvements in creativity, individual initiative, and general happiness. People who had lived their entire lives under Council control are rediscovering what it means to make their own choices, he explained. The psychological transformation is as dramatic as the political one. Entire civilizations are remembering how to dream. Lieutenant Kim Soo-won, now General Kim, presented the most important information about the new galactic order. The Galactic Liberation Alliance was not a replacement for the Council. It was something completely different, an organization designed to protect freedom rather than control it. We learned from your Council's mistakes, General Kim explained. Every member species maintains complete internal autonomy. The Alliance exists only to prevent any group from trying to recreate the kind of galactic empire your people built. Admiral Park addressed Kekstar's unspoken question about what would happen to former council members. Your people are welcome to join the alliance as equals, he said. No punishment, no revenge, no forced changes to your society. You can govern yourselves however you choose. As long as you do not try to govern others. Dr. Kim showed him the terms that had been offered to all former council species. Complete independence with optional participation in alliance mutual defense agreements, access to the same technology sharing. Programs available to all members, protection from any group that might try to exploit them during their transition to self-governance. The irony was not lost on anyone in the room. The humans were offering former council species the genuine version of what the council had promised to everyone else: protection without control, assistance without domination, cooperation without absorption. Captain Han presented military data showing how the new alliance would prevent future galactic empires. The defense structure was designed to make large-scale conquest impossible while allowing individual species to flourish. No single group would ever again be able to absorb others the way the Council had done. Commander Lee explained the philosophical foundation of the new order. We believe that diversity makes the galaxy stronger, he said. Every species has unique perspectives and capabilities that benefit everyone when shared freely. The Council's mistake was trying to make everyone the same. Dr. Kim added scientific evidence supporting this approach. Our research shows that galactic civilization advances faster when different species work together as equals rather than when one species dominates all others. The Council system actually slowed down progress by suppressing innovation. General Kim delivered the final important message about humanity's role in the new galactic order. Humans will not rule this alliance, she said. We will participate as one species among many. Our job is to make sure no one ever again tries to build the kind of empire your council created. Admiral Park stood and walked to the window where Earth ships could be seen patrolling alongside vessels from dozens of other species. The sight of former enemies working together as equals demonstrated the transformation that had occurred. Your council taught us an important lesson, he said. Power that is taken by force will eventually be challenged by force, but power that is shared freely becomes stronger. The alliance will endure because it